Hello everyone, this is Jake from Fife Paranormal, and I hope you all are having a great day. In today's video, I'm going to talk a bit about Bigfoot. Now, Bigfoot goes by many different names. You have, of course, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Skunk Ape, Yowie, the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti. Now, a lot of people may say that these are different creatures or different versions of the same species, and that's what I believe. There's a lot of people that say Bigfoot is, I guess, a living version of the Gigantopithecus. There's a lot of people that say it is an interdimensional entity, a possible extraterrestrial. Some people say that it is an even form of human that just didn't evolve the way we did. As for whether or not you believe all those or one of those, that's up to you. Personally, I believe that it's a mix. I believe there are some instances where it is an animal that survived extinction. I believe that in some cases it could have a tie to extraterrestrial activity simply because in some Bigfoot experiences encountered, especially in the northern part of North America, a lot of Bigfoot sightings do coincide with UFO sightings. So that's something that's very interesting. One of the things I always found very, very interesting is when a lot of people, especially the early frontier settlers, we're talking, the 1600s, 1700s, almost before the 1800s, a lot of people, they would find these almost like villages of these tall, hairy creatures. And in some cases, mainly around the Sierra Nevadas, the northern part of America is typically where it happened. But there are a few instances in the southern part of America where this happened, is that these creatures, these hairy creatures, could even speak. Now, that sounds really implausible, really extraordinary, but what's a really cool tie, and there's a famous Bigfoot researcher named Ron Moorhead. He was the guy who recorded the famous Sierra sounds, and I've had the honor of talking to him many times about Sierra sounds and his thoughts and theories on Bigfoot. And something that he brought up to me years ago I had never heard of before was that back in the days of samurais over in Japan and in China, mainly Japan though, they had legends that if you wanted to craft the best sword possible, if you wanted to learn the best skills of, how to be the best samurai, how to be the best swordsman, you went and saw the old masters in the mountains. And the old masters, they were described as these tall, hairy people that were really, really good at making weapons. Now, what's really interesting about this is another tie-in, and this is something you may believe, you may not believe, but it's something that I have read and I'm inclined to believe. In one of the books that was taken out of the Bible, the Book of Enoch, it talks about these beings, the Rephilim, which is, I guess, the parents, the generation before the Nephilim, which the Nephilims are often talked when you hear people talk about Bigfoots and giants. But the Rephilim, it's described in the Book of Enoch and also in the Book of Noah that they were the ones that came down from heaven, almost like a fallen angels type thing. And, they caused chaos on earth. They wed with, the women and animals, and they created these monstrosities, these hybrids of half human, half angels, half God creatures, basically. But one of the main ones, Azazel, was the one who came down and taught humanity how to forge weapons and armor. And as punishment, God created the flood. And that's what happened in the Book of Noah. But the ones that were described with the Rephilim were these tall, hairy creatures. And it said that they spread out all over God's creation, so all over Earth. And so that's a potential connection between the old story from the samurai of the old masters, being these tall, hairy creatures that were very good at making weapons, very good at making armor, and they knew, skills about how to be good swordsmen that no one else knew. And then you have the Rephilim from the Book of Enoch and the early Book of Noah that, it basically describes the same exact thing. And I think that's very interesting that, two separate cultures, two separate stories have that direct tie that, it does sound like they're describing the exact same thing. Now, there's many famous Bigfoot cases out there, and I'm not going to go through every single one. But, of course, there's the well-known Patterson-Gimlin film, which, personally, I have seen that footage at least 100 times. And I'm still kind of on the fence. I want to say it's real because I have seen so many tests done on it to where, some tests have proven that, it does look like a person. But most of the tests I've seen, they haven't been able to prove that it's a human. It's still unexplained. And so that's why I'm not instantly going to discredit it or anything like that, because some of the movements that it makes, when you look at how a human should be able to move, especially with, a costume, we'll call it a costume on, it shouldn't be able to have that full range of motion. It shouldn't look that realistic, everything. We may never know the full truth about that. My personal favorite Bigfoot case of all time is the Red Rock Giants, which is very interesting if you ever get a chance to listen to it. And another one that's really cool is the Solomon Island Giants. Now, I'm going to make a very plain distinction here that there is a difference between giants, sightings, and Bigfoots. And the only reason I'm going to include this is simply because it's a cool story, and it can fall into either camp of giants or Bigfoots. Like I said, some people, they put those in kind of the same camp. I don't. But during World War II, you had the Midway Islands, the Marshall Islands, basically the United States and Japan. They were fighting like crazy over territory. And there was this one group of islands called the Solomon Islands. And the Japanese army, they got to it first. And they sent, a force on land to go, check, see if there were American soldiers there, and then set up a base of operations. When they made landfall, they heard this god-awful noise come from the woods on this island when they had gotten on the beach. And they reported, this is an actual Japanese military report, that these tall, hairy people with sticks and spears and rocks came at them and attacked the Japanese army. And the Japanese army, they had machine guns, they had grenades, all this stuff. They killed a few of them, but some of their soldiers were killed, and they had to pull back from the island, get out of there, and go back to their fleet in the ocean. That they were, chased off this island, Solomon Island, by these creatures, these tall, hairy giants. And they ended up just completely leaving the area, basically letting the Americans have the islands for free when they were so tightly contested. And I always thought, if this story's true, I tend to believe it is true because, that was a very hotly contested thing. They were trying to get as much territory as possible during World War II. So, why would the Japanese just abandon these chain of islands, for no reason? And something else that's very interesting is the United States Army, and even still to this day, when they took the island shortly after that battle happened, first off, there were reports of some Bigfoot-like creatures being seen, but no stories of all-out battles or things like that. I'm sure it was kept very hush-hush, but there were a lot of sightings of UFOs. So that's a potential link, like I said earlier, between, these tall, hairy creatures and UFOs. That's a very cool one. And then the 8 Canyon cabin case is one of my favorites, where these people, they were mining out in 8 Canyon in California. And these Bigfoots, about, I believe it was 3 or 4 of them, basically came at them, trying to scare them off because it was their territory. And so one of the guys ended up wounding one of the Bigfoot creatures with his gun. And that night, the Bigfoots came back, and about 4 or 5 of them attacked the cabin. And, the people, they ended up leaving the next morning. They basically had to fight their way out of there. And they quit. They gave up their search for diamonds, gold, everything. They just turned tail and ran and never returned. And ever since then, people have reported some aggressive like Bigfoots being in that area. But one that's also one of my favorites is the Siege of Hanaboa, which we'll probably do a video on that here soon. That is one of, if not my favorite Bigfoot case of all time. And I personally have had a few experiences with Bigfoots. When I was 9 years old, I was looking out the window one day. I heard my dogs barking, this deep in the mountains of southern West Virginia. And I saw this tall, hairy creature with black fur, looked to be about 6.5, 7 feet tall, maybe a little bit taller. And it was just walking up the four-wheeler path. ATV trail. And that was the very first time I'd ever seen anything like that. I know for a fact it wasn't a bear. It looked very human-like, and it walked almost like, kind of like the Patterson-Gimlin footage Bigfoot walked. It was very similar, hunched over. And I do remember at one point it did like a half-turn look towards the house, and it was very creepy look. It wasn't, a friendly sight like seeing Chewbacca at Disney World. It was creepy. And one of the things that scared me was whenever I'd be outside, I could hear shrieks, I could hear screams coming from up in the woods. So, hearing Bigfoot chatter, things like that, that was always not really common, but whenever it would happen, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. But, it wasn't until here recently that I was really creeped out by it. In November, Chris and I were back in the area. Actually, it was October, I believe. We were in Southern West Virginia, and actually at that same place. And I've shared the video here before, but I recorded some very disturbing Bigfoot calls. And at the end of this video, I'm going to put the calls in. I want to hear what your all's thoughts are about them. But Bigfoot, that's something that I would like to do a Bigfoot investigation one day. Now, I'm not a huge expert, so I don't know exactly how that would be conducted, aside from, going into the woods with a bunch of equipment, maybe sound blasting, making some calls, kind of like finding Bigfoot style. But I'm sure that there is a big formal way. There's tactics involved. Because in a way, you do have to approach it like you're dealing with a wild animal, as to where, as a paranormal investigator, you're dealing with, I'm just trying to think, you're dealing with humans, basically, that have moved on, and then there's the occasional other entity that makes its presence known. So, have you ever had a Bigfoot experience, and what are your thoughts on Bigfoot, Sasquatches, whatever you want to call them? Let us know in the comments, or feel free to message the page, but I'm Jake from Fife Paranormal. I hope you all have enjoyed this video, and have a great day.
It's going. That's a dog.
Mm-hmm. That's not a dog.
Okay, that's not a dog.
I can't tell if it's back that way or back that way.
Because it's echoing.
There's a light just kicked on. Looks like a flashlight.